Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot here with Potomac Watch, and I'm here with Kim Strassel and Kyle Peterson. Let's turn to the nitty-gritty of the next political era here. Congress is in session now, heading to the president's inaugural on January 20th. And after that, big decisions on how to approach legislation. Donald Trump and the House Speaker seem to have made a decision to go ahead with putting all of the Trump agenda into one giant bill. Tax cut extension, energy, border security, $2.5 trillion in spending cuts, debt limit increase, the whole kitchen sink, Kim. And, Senate leaders had preferred two reconciliation bills. Those are the bills that are related to the budget that can pass the Senate with 51 votes, not go to a filibuster. But Speaker Johnson seems to have prevailed with Donald Trump. Let's listen to the Speaker explain.
I respect Lindsey Graham and all my friends who kind of preferred a two-step strategy. The idea would be get something done on the border and maybe defense spending right out of the blocks very quickly in what we would call a skinny reconciliation bill, and then do the rest of it in a larger chunk later. But I think at the end of the day, President Trump is going to prefer, as he likes to say, one big, beautiful bill. And there's a lot of merit to that because we can put it all together, one big up or down vote, which can save the country, quite literally, because there are so many elements to it. And it'll give us a little bit more time to negotiate that and get it right.
Wow, Kim. The logic seems to be that if you put everything in one bill, and you force all of the Republican members to vote up or down, knowing that if they vote no, they could be dooming the entire Trump and GOP agenda. Good decision?
There is no logic here, Paul, in my mind. And by the way, I don't even think this is House Speaker Mike Johnson. He had given at least quiet support to the Senate strategy, waiting to see what Trump would say. Mm-hmm. And the real victor here seems to be House Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith, who is going to be in charge of this tax bill. He immediately objected to the two-step process. He seemed to be concerned that taxes and his agenda would get lost in the wayside, would not be given as much priority as this first immediate bill. That's silly in my mind. It's going to take a long time to work out the tax element of this. If you go back and look at prior efforts to put through tax bills, in fact, most recently, 2017, it took Republicans at least a year, almost more than that, to get their members all on board. There are so many moving pieces. So in my mind, here's what they've decided to do. They had the opportunity to come in and immediately get everyone on board on a bunch of priorities that everyone agrees on that are going to get the Trump administration off to a big solid bang when it comes to the border, when it comes to energy, and when it comes to some defense dollars. All of those were main issues of his campaign. Instead, they're going to do none of that, and they're all going to descend into a big brawl. By the way, just having seen how easy it's going to be for them to fight with each other, given the speaker's vote, and we won't see anything be done for the Trump agenda for months and months, if at all.
It's interesting, Kim, you say that. I tend to agree with you that these things are way too complicated to get done soon. But they're talking about getting this big tax reconciliation bill done by February or March, which strikes me as fanciful, particularly given the fact that they're going to be negotiating the next version of funding the government, which expires on March 14th.
By the way, they also have to confirm, Trump appointees. They got a few other things to do.
That's right. So the other thing that I don't quite get is why would you give up a second reconciliation bill? Because there aren't that many things that you can get through Chuck Schumer and the filibuster. So anything you can get passed with 51 votes in the Senate, you probably want to do. Now, you can't put everything in there. It's got to be budget related. It's got to be, revenues and spending. Appropriations bills do need 60 votes. But in terms of a lot of things, you can get it done. And the Democrats proved that with doing two reconciliation bills in Biden's first 2 years. One that passed that gigantic spending bill in March of 2021, and then later the Inflation Reduction Act, which included record numbers of spending and all of the green subsidies and $80 billion for the IRS, among other things, Kyle. So it strikes me that this is a pretty risky strategy, both on the timeline. We get to June and nothing's happening. People are going to start having pretty tight collars. What have you accomplished, sir? What have you done? And then the other risk is if you pile everything into one bill, maybe you force the hand of Republicans, but maybe it can have so much in there that you give an excuse to people not to vote for it in the end.
Yeah, I think the theory is that we have enough trouble getting together to elect a speaker, and maybe we can get one bill over the finish line, and it would be doubly hard to get two bills over the finish line. But I agree with all that's been said about the difficulty of negotiating these tax provisions. There is a lot that is on the table. Some of the blue state Republicans want an added state and local tax deduction, a SALT deduction, which is going to cost a lot of money if Republicans try to go down that road. Trump has promised tax-free tips. There are billions and billions and maybe trillions of dollars of campaign promises that have been made, and it is not going to be easy to hash out which of them is actually going to be part of this bill. But I don't think that Trump himself seems to have committed to this one bill strategy. On Monday, reading from The Hill, he was on the Hugh Hewitt show. He's now saying, I'd prefer one, but I will do whatever needs to be done to get it passed. I'm open to either way, as long as we get something passed as quickly as possible, which is classic Trump leadership. Somebody gets into a meeting with him and they come out of that meeting and say, one bill, Trump wants one beautiful bill. That's what we're doing. And 2 days later, he saws the limb off after that person walks out on it. So who knows? Maybe we'll be at two bills by the end of this. Maybe we'll be back at one bill. Maybe they'll decide 3 or 4 bills if that gets into Trump's head somehow.
Well, you only get 2 reconciliation bills here because they're basically taking last year's budget bill and carrying it over to this year. That gives them the second bite at the apple, and then they'll do next year's financing budget. That's the other one. But it does seem to me, Kim, that you got to have the House and the Senate on the same page ultimately. Otherwise, you get the House pass one package, and then the Senate says, sorry, we're going to do 2 bills. Well, then you have to go back to the House and they have to do the whole thing over. You have to have the same strategy.
Yeah, I agree. And I worry here that this is the beginning, like this is going to be a standard that we see that is going to be very debilitating for Republicans. As we have stressed over and over, there is going to be nothing more important for this very narrow GOP majority to getting things done than unity. And Donald Trump seems to have the attitude that unity comes from I, Donald Trump, put out a decree and all of you jump as high as I asked you to. And we saw with the speaker's vote that that's not how many people are going to react. I'll throw one last thing in here, which is where I think the real clash is coming. When that speaker's vote happened and Mike Johnson only barely made it across the line, the House Freedom Caucus put out a press release, said that, fine, we did this, but we were putting you on notice and here are our demands. And one of them was, when we have this reconciliation bill, we need to be overall cutting spending. Okay, that is not on Donald Trump's agenda at the moment.
That's for sure.
And there are 35 or so of these guys in the House Freedom Caucus, and they will not be moved from that position when it comes to reconciliation. And Donald Trump's out there going, yeah, let's just get rid of taxes on tips and taxes on Social Security. It's all going to cost a fortune, but it'll all be great and it'll be beautiful. Well, that's just one great example of the collision that is coming on this reconciliation bill.
Yeah, he also wants to include an increase or suspension of the debt limit. They're going to run out of money, people think, starting maybe in June. The debt limit already was returned as of January, and now the Treasury is conducting special operations to be able to drawing down its reserves to be able to avoid a default. But eventually that runs out. Trump wants to get that in. There are, 35 Republicans who say, I'll never vote for an increase in the debt limit. So that complicates things further. So, this is going to be an extended and not easy negotiation. There's no perfect answer here legislatively. You've got to see where the votes are. But it's interesting. There's going to have to be a lot less, I think, shooting from the hip, shooting from the lip of Donald Trump, and more actual close quarters negotiation to say, how do we get to 218 and 51? All right. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Kim. Thank you all for listening. We're off and running with the new year and the new government, and it's going to be a fun ride. Thanks for listening.